Happy Thanksgiving evening to Bulldog fans. And boy, is it a happy Thanksgiving evening for Bulldog fans. For the ones who are here at Scott Field, for the ones at a safer distance during tonight's dramatics, for the Bulldog football team, and most of all for Coach Joe Moorhead, who earned the right to make some pretty pointed statements in postgame because he is the winning coach, and now he is locked in at Mississippi State as the coach. He said it's his team, his program, and his school, and he means to make it stand because now he is 2-0 in the battle for the Golden Egg, something that has not been done by a first-time Bulldog coach in a very, very, very long time.
Well, maybe Dan Mullen. I think Dan Mullen was the last guy to win the first two. He won his first 3 Egg Bowls. But yeah, David, it's a great night, but it's a wild night and it's a weird night. And you and I have discussed this off air. Is that David, you spent your life covering Mississippi State, and in my research of Mississippi State, for books and things like that, I don't think we've ever had a battle for the Golden Egg end quite like this one, where not only was an extra point pushed right, but a team with a self-inflicted wound pushed that PAT back. And what was in that, the moment was so huge. You convert a 4th and 24 when it seemed like all is lost, and you get down there and you score what appears to should be a game-tying touchdown. And then it's like a dumb front rolls in, David. It's incredible. I don't know that we've really fully come to grips with this moment.
And, of course, as you know, Ole Miss missed the tying PAT, which turned into a short field goal because the player who scored the presumably tying touchdown just yielded to temptation and, frankly, did what happened a couple of years ago in this same field at the other end zone. No penalty flag was really thrown on that one. This one it was. And Coach Joe Moorhead, I know the officiating crew was going to assess it on the kickoff because they just assumed. And Moorhead said, no, we're going to assess it on the PAT and make it, yes, a short field goal, but still the mindset from a PAT to a longer kick, that had to weigh on the Ole Miss kicker's mind. And as you've also noted, he was kicking into the student section. Kudos to Bulldog students. They may have been slow arriving today, but they stuck around to the end, and it was not a bitter end at all. As Mississippi State, I guess you could say, held their water, and Ole Miss kind of whizzed one away.
David, it's true, and you're right. We love the students, and I tell you, I was worried because Thanksgiving break is here. A lot of students have gone home, but they came back. And they were here for this team. And that was one of the things I really worried about because the students often set the tone for the crowd tonight. And when we first walked out here, it was a mess. And I thought, you know what, it's going to be a really small crowd. But there were some problems with the gates. They got that worked out. We got players in. We got fans in. And the team really responded. I really think, David, we talk about the play. We talk about the unsportsmanlike. Not to be lost in all the shuffle is the day the Mississippi State defense had really slowing down that Ole Miss offense.
And, of course, the Rebel offense was somewhat limited, although they threw the ball a little bit better than we expected tonight. 9 of 14 by the starter Plumlee, 6 of 12 by Matt Corral, who was inserted strictly to throw the ball there. And they made some plays and, of course, could have tied the game up. But as Errol Thompson said, the whole idea containing Plumlee and Jerry and Ely and others was just don't let them get around you. Yes, they broke a few plays, but they never got the great big one, except for one where a guy rolled off a Bulldog defender, and even that series ended in a turnover. The Bulldog defense, which has had its troubles this year, making stops, finishing off tackles, they made the plays they had to make tonight, and some huge interceptions as well.
Absolutely, David. And that's one of the things, too, and to give Ole Miss John Rice Plumlee his proper respect. He has gashed some teams. Now, granted, much of it has been in mop-up time. There was no mop-up time tonight because Mississippi State, as they've done all year in games they've won, they win the first quarter. And we talked about that all week. State needed to get out of the gate. It's a 7-0 lead after one, and it's a 14-0 lead. And then you begin to think, okay, State's one play away from really maybe kind of putting this thing away. Ole Miss comes back, ties the ball game. I think every Bulldog at halftime was breathing a little bit heavy because we thought, you know what, here we go again. But I believe the bottom line, David, Jaquarius Landers, he's a guy that will maybe a footnote in Mississippi State's football history, perhaps had the game of his career tonight as a spy on John Rice Plumlee and really made Ole Miss one-dimensional and forced a quarterback change.
Also, I mentioned Errol Thompson. He and Garrett Schrader, quarterback, also agreed that what made a big difference this game was State never played from behind. They were either ahead or at least no worse than tied through the course of the game. And as Thompson said, it allowed you to play more confident, like you couldn't lose the game on one play right there. So they were able to keep going, do what they had to do, and just stay in contention there without really getting rattled, because that's not a team you want to try to come back on.
It's true. And David, we talk so much about John Rice Plumlee, but our kid's pretty good too. And we got some information late yesterday that Garrett Schrader would likely start. We found out a little bit later that Tommy Stevens didn't practice all week. Garrett Schrader had ran with the ones and was prepared to start all week. I thought the moment proved to be just fine for him. I didn't think that it overpowered him. He had a couple of great reads down around the goal line. And, David, probably the play of the game. The little toss of Dedrick Thomas to extend the drive there when you just felt like Ole Miss was about to wrestle momentum away. Schrader patiently waits for his guy to clear, buys just enough time, and drops it in there. The next thing you know, State's in the end zone.
I would also argue that he made another candidate for play of the game on the 3rd and 12 keeper. When he recognized early there was a chance to go to the left side and made it work and got the first down and kept those drives going. And even though Ole Miss ended up with more yards and made a few more plays there, what Garrett Schrader did, with one exception, when he had the ball stripped from him, trying to get a little extra effort on him, and frankly, it wasn't his fault because that blitz was not picked up. He did what a freshman's supposed to do in this game. He played not to lose the game, and he didn't. And he made some creative plays. I think his very first pass completion of the game, where he's got a guy in his face and just kind of flips it up there, and they come down with it for 20 yards, I think that kind of set an emotional tone for the offense in the first half.
It certainly, I think, gave them some confidence that they could move the football when they needed to. And really, throughout the night, it seemed like when State needed to make a play, they were able to make a play. And that's something that's been missing. And, David, listen, the first couple of drives were not offensive masterpieces. I really thought that Ole Miss had us a little bit confused there. But the defense played well enough to keep the game even. You get the turnover on the first Ole Miss drive as they're driving. You force a punt. Next thing you know, State gets it going. And so it really was a team game. And we did have a special team snafu that allowed Ole Miss to kind of sneak back into the ball game. When you've got an opportunity to pin them back deep, and we bobble a snap and then kind of make an ill-advised decision to run for it. And I understand what he saw, but sometimes these punters forget they're not runners. And that came back, and Ole Miss took full advantage and really, I think, gave them a lot of momentum. But coming out, State's defense again makes a stop, gets the offense back on the field.
Yeah, I thought the start to the second half was just as key as the start of the first, because they made a couple stops defensively and kept the field position in their favor. And that can't be overestimated what it meant, because State playing with a short field was a huge advantage. In fact, Ole Miss tied the game because they got to play in a short field in there. The strip by Chauncey Rivers and the fumble return by Willie Gay was another tone setter there. So Dogs just stepped up and made individual plays tonight. And we can run through a lot of the facts there. Of course, I think this is the 4th time now in a single decade the Bulldogs have gone into an Egg Bowl needing to win to either lock up or hope for a bowl berth, and all 4 times they succeeded now. Of course, the Liberty Bowl was represented here tonight. We believe the Music City Bowl will be State's first choice when the selections come out next Sunday evening. Also, this means Mississippi State wins another decade in the series there, which is something for us old dogs. We keep track of such things like that. And, of course, Joe Moorhead is now 2-0. He's following Dan Mullen's footprints in that regard as well. Let's talk about Moorhead. Yes, Steve, we've had to write some pretty hard stories the last 2 weeks. Took no pleasure in it, but we just had to state the facts that Mississippi State did not need this bowl streak to win. State has had 2 seasons where they didn't meet the standards that they self-proclaimed were there. But the bottom line is Joe Moorhead came out and said, this is my school, this is my program, this is my team, in that kind of order. And he made it clear that you're going to drag his, I won't use his phrase for it, but his northern posterior out of here to get rid of him. I think he has pretty well locked it in. And if he can continue to show that kind of fire in public, he's a great guy. He's good at connecting with fans, talking to them. But if he shows that kind of fire, I think the fan base is really going to start buying into him again.
Well, David, let's be honest. One of the things that really curries favor with Mississippi State fans is beating Ole Miss. And there's a lot of Bulldog fans on Monday that'll strap on that maroon shirt, and they'll go to the water cooler or the coffee pot, and they're going to feel really good about life. They're going to have a renewed sense of pride. Now, that doesn't erase the fact that Mississippi State had its share of issues. Yes, you had the Tutorgate 10 situation. Yes, you've had some injury situations. Injuries are part of the game. The Tutorgate thing, hopefully, is never part of the Mississippi State game ever again. But tonight you had the full complement of your offense and defense because everybody was available to play except for those who've been lost for the season. And we got a really good glimpse of what this team probably should have been. And that's the thing. He made a comment, Willie Gay and Marcus Murphy both played together in 3 games, 3 SEC games, and you won all 3 of them. I think that bodes well for the future. There's some things that have to be addressed, have to be cleaned up. We're not going to sit here. A win over Ole Miss doesn't wash away all your problems. But I think it buys off some time. buys you some time to address those things. And Garrett Schrader said in the postgame, Joe Moorhead's my coach, and we're going to win a lot of ball games together.
I also got a great quote out of Garrett Schrader. Asked him to get a chance to run the round with the egg. He said, yeah, it wasn't as heavy as it looked. That's Garrett Schrader. He's such a low-key, dry humor guy. He will be the face of the program coming years. And speaking of that, you and I talked yesterday, if a team we often overrate the value of bowl camp. You can't overestimate what a bowl camp will mean for Moorhead and this particular team with all the freshmen, the sophomores, and the hopefully returning juniors to make up next year's roster, as well as the impact it makes. A lot of recruits were here tonight, a lot of guys still making decisions, a lot of guys committed who need to finish that deal off. Tonight could not have helped but a great impression, both the win, the attitude the Bulldogs showed during and after the win with their celebration, the fan celebration as well, and frankly, as I mentioned, Coach Moorhead's just aggressive all out. I am this team's coach, and now he is, and the recruits have seen that. Not
only, David, but your tip of the cap to the Bulldog fans that came out tonight, and there were a lot of Bulldog fans that had plenty of reasons and some excuses to stay home. It was a pretty good crowd. There were some bar wrenches at the upper deck, but the crowd was here. They were into the ball game, and I really thought they made a difference late when Ole Miss is mounting a drive. They energized the Bulldogs a little bit, and again, we talk about the students. Spent some time down there myself, kind of saluting the students. It's a big deal for those guys to be here. And we talk, this team had a difficult October. We felt like, if we could have a winning November, we've got that 3-1. You extend the season, you get into a bowl game, and having bowl practices is like having a second spring. So now you have that, and it gives you a springboard. And David, if you go back and look at 2013, State beats Ole Miss on this very field with Dak Prescott. Then you go destroy Rice in the Liberty Bowl. You had the big season of 2014, 2016, another one, tough one. But you win the Egg Bowl, and you win the bowl game, and you come back and have a great 2017 year. And so, the lessons learned from this, perhaps a win tonight, but you got to finish the deal, win the bowl game, and really get a springboard into 2020.
And for all Coach Moorhead's aggressiveness with reminding the media that a lot of us said some things, wrote some things this week, entirely justified. Coach, you're right. And if some of us, including myself, came on a little too hard, you're right again. And thank you for proving all of us wrong in that regard. And thank you again to Coach Moorhead and your predecessors because, Steve, since this game came back to campus in 1991 on this field, Mississippi State now leads 16-13. I think, although there's some of you that will spit when I say the name, I'm going to tell you, tip your hat in the direction of Larry Templeton for pulling this game back on campus in 1991 and the arrival of Coach Jackie Sherrill, who was honored here tonight on this field as well at halftime with the 98-99 teams. The Egg Bowl is where it belongs on campus. It makes us sick. It makes us hurt. It makes us frantic. But it makes us so happy on nights like this.
It does, David, and we talk about it. Sometimes the relief of a moment like this, because the fear of losing to your rival sometimes exceeds the joy in winning. But it feels pretty good to win tonight. I don't think Mississippi State played not to lose. I thought Mississippi State played to win, and with their backs against the wall, the defense did the best they could, but Ole Miss did them a big favor in addition to that. And how ironic is it that special teams has been such an issue for Mississippi State all year, and it's a special teams play and a mistake by another team that ultimately puts them into the postseason.
Well, having survived the 1983 windblown field goal game, I'll take it any way they want to give it to us. So for our team here from Jeeves Bay 24/7, thank you, Bulldog fans, for sticking with us during the regular season. We'll be talking as soon as bowl camp information becomes available next week. We'll be covering that full speed. But let's take a little bit of a break. Enjoy your Black Friday shopping if you dare venture out in the malls. Wear your gear. And, of course, Saturday as well. And then Monday, let's start the new year over because 12 months from now, we'll be in Oxford playing to keep the golden egg at home again. It safely sits in Starkville for another year. Thank you, Joe Moorhead. Thank you, Bulldogs. And thank you most of all, our Jeans Page 24/7 supporters. For Steve Robertson here at Davis Wade Stadium above Scott Field, this is David Murray.